All right. Good morning, people. You know, it's interesting when you realize that different areas hold ancestors of people from past wars, like the 1800s, okay? And I'm just thinking, like, when people trace their lineage back, especially over here in the Northeast, I was looking at my husband the other day many times, and I'm like, dude, you look like a musketeer. You look like, a Civil War soldier, whether it's the North or the South. If I put fatigues on you from the 1800s and you wearing Confederate garb or a Union garb, you would look the part. It would be like as if there was no time gone by, 200 years later type of thing. I mean, or 100 something years later. It's like, whoa, yeah. And so when you really bring history close, like seriously, history close to you, even though 1860 was like 1860 to 1960 is like 100 years, right? Then from 1960 to 2060, it'd be another 100, it'd be 200 years, but we're not into 2060 yet. We have a few years to go. Like 170, 160 years, give or take. But yeah, it's not that long ago. It's like a few generations. When you think about how old America is, it's not that old, 247 years. Okay? And there's 15 different generations ever since 1776. 5 sets of 3? Okay? And so then I'm thinking like, oh shit, so there's a Civil War. And I was watching Tyler Perry Medea yesterday, family reunion that came on Netflix. And I hadn't watched that in a while. And I watched it again. And Tyler Perry is awesome because he was focusing on some pretty heavy social issues that happen in African American communities as well as in Caucasian communities. But domestic violence is huge. Domestic violence and the plight of the African American and the Black man in this world and what they've had to deal with. And of course, their own domestic social issues. And so watching Blair Underwood just, play the abuser in that show was like, holy crap. And the wife had to get a backbone. But, I wouldn't condone someone fighting back the way she did unless you were cornered. If there is a way out and you walk away from that situation, okay, if there's a way out. If you're cornered, you do what you got to do. But I would never condone anyone to premeditate even harming somebody who has done harm to you. I would never. I would leave. That's what I recommend. Any woman who is in a domestic violence situation, you leave, you don't commit premeditation of anything. Because she could have killed him. She could have really hurt him with those grits and hurt him with that frying pan. But that he was trying to make a point. I mean, that whole story was trying to make a point. Fight for your life. And now it's like you don't premeditate anything against anyone, whether the government or whoever you think is the enemy. You fight for your own life. In the West, no one's going into your house. In the West, okay? So that means that, you fight for your life and figure out who the enemy is. And now we're in a domestic war, a civil war, that I already knew that we were in, but how do you tell people this when their whole world is built on family and friends and all of that? And so I'm going to read this because it's so apropos. Okay? I'm going to read this. I'm going to sandwich everything in between. And so 1860 U.S. Civil War, slavery of the Black people, states' rights versus federal overreach, checks and balances, right? Because there's even argument on what the Civil War was based on. Yeah, it was checks and balances. The South wanted to secede and all that and do their own thing. And the feds were like, nope. Lincoln's like bringing everyone together, the Union. And also there was slavery. And there's a lot of intolerance. I even had to go through that process of what the Confederate flag meant, what it meant to different people, even the last 12 years. Because I'm living here in Ohio, and there's people who probably still would fly the Confederate flag and not realize there's a lot more meaning than just states' rights. It's also the plight of the black man and the slavery that happened in the South. And so when I was watching Medea, and then I did that Facebook reel on, trying to figure out how to focus on the South in the 1860s and the slavery and all of that. And the Civil War, that I knew kind of what's going on right now, where history is repeating. And so that's when I did that Facebook reel using Margaret Mitchell's, well, it wasn't Margaret Mitchell, but it was the overture of Gone with the Wind, which was my favorite movie, with Scarlett O'Hara and Clark Gable. And, oh man, there was some great acting back then. So, yeah, so when I posted that Facebook reel with those photos of the watercolors of the Civil War, and then the photos as if art jumped into real life, and using that overture, I mean, that's what we're in. And when you think about the premise of Gone with the Wind, and it was about Tara coming back home. She had to fight those wars out there, but home was where everything made sense to her. Okay, but then now home is a battleground. So now we're going to evolve from the 1860s. The battleground is not there anymore, where you figured out no more slavery and Reconstruction. And now it's the battleground between the sexes. And it's the battleground between humans in America, at least. So 1860, U.S. Civil War, slavery of black people, states' rights versus federal overreach, checks and balances. 1960, family civil war, slavery of women in the home or out there in the population. Is it really sexual freedom, like they mentioned back in the 1960s? Or is it sexual slavery? The family versus the single hot chick, right? 2060, continental civil war. 2060, yeah, in the future we're going to have, after Africa goes through their own civil war of family. And you're watching it right now. I mean, you're watching history repeat right now in Africa. They're going through their own sexual freedom, the dating pool, family. What does it mean? What is the gender roles? What does it mean to be a woman or a man? What is their role? That's what Africa is going through. They're going to have their own civil war. But it's going to be a civil war through the family, a microbial civil war, and a division of labor civil war. So 2060, eventually, after the infrastructure gets built in Africa and people figure out stuff and they go through their own evolution like we did, and having those conversations on Facebook, okay, and getting people up to the level of their community, then eventually they're going to release the demons. Who's them? The system. They're going to release everybody from slavery, and Africa's going to go through their own microbial war, okay? And they might be living to be 150, maybe, potentially, without even the J world, but they will have their own scale down. Okay, but right now it's too early to say. They're going through their own beginning process of intellectual capability, of philosophy, understanding Western ideals, and again, the family. So 2060, continental civil war, releasing all the slaves in the world on some level, and the infrastructure has been built. We are in a type of civil war. Because you really think about it, it's 2100. In my opinion, I think the Georgia Guidestones will be realized by 2100. Because you still have to get through the infertility of the West and their own skill and the skill of watching these kids who are so skinny right now. Like, I remember a couple years ago just watching some of my old classmates and they're having kids. And these kids are skinny and they're sickly. They don't look very healthy at all. They don't look robust. They look like they are dealing with conditions. And they are starving. And you're just like, dude, and they've gone in and out of the hospital many times. Okay? And so, anyways, so releasing all the slaves in the world on some level, and the infrastructure has been built, and we are in a type of civil war, microbial civil wars. The Gettysburg Address is very fitting right now during this climate change. Okay? And so, yeah, right now, that's what I was saying, 2100, I think the Georgia Guidestones will be realized. We got to go through we're going probably 2050, the Western infertility. There'll be even African infertility at some point. there will be birthing centers all over the world, and the system will develop the people they want, okay, to do whatever specific job. And there'll be artificial intelligence, there'll be robots to do most of the menial labor. And so, yeah, so in my opinion, I think by 2100, because 2060 is when, there's going to be stuff going on. So that's what I'm saying. Prepare yourself to get very well. And people are, somebody in the J world but they scale down their lives so they can pay attention to their health. So I'll tell you, once you pay attention to your health and you get rid of all the little demons and you reconfigure your internal infrastructure, you'll be able to handle the changes that are going on in the West, and you have the latitude. You're not trying to fight for survival like those in war-torn countries who have not even gone to another level of evolution, still stay stuck back in 6,000 years ago, living in poverty, not wanting to change, having 1 billion children, and living in patriarchal societies of the man where it's not very, progressive, okay? So anyways, we are in a type of civil war. Microbial wars, the Gettysburg Address is very fitting right now during this climate change. It's brother against brother, sister against sister, mother versus daughters and sons and fathers, girlfriend and boyfriends and husbands and wives, wife and wife, husband and husband. History repeats. But instead of out there fighting your brother like north against south, now you're fighting your family members. Oh, what do you mean fighting? Well, yeah, there's domestic violence. People do stupid shit all the time, and some kids don't survive. Some people are getting buried and found in suitcases and stuff. So now it's a domestic violence, domestic civil war, family civil war. And it's not only the violence in the family, but it's also the microbial disease in the family. And so when you go out there and you take in all the environment, the ectoplasm, right? When you think about it, yeah, you're doing great like I was. I was doing okay out there, when I was at the restaurant. It's when you come home is when you're fighting that battle. When you come home, you are fighting that battle of that disease, of the wars that you took on out there. And it's not really a war. You're just going to a restaurant. But it's when your body, your immune system has to fight off the spirits, the microbes that you've inhaled in this highly accelerated environment. Imagine what these kids are dealing with. Imagine what these parents are dealing with out there. Imagine what the immunocompromised is dealing with out there, right? And so your home is Gettysburg right now. It is the battleground you are fighting on right now. And the injured and the casualties of this war are ending up in the area hospitals and the morgue. Okay? The hospital system is the system of casualties of the war that you don't even know you're in. Because it's been accepted. Cancer's been accepted as okay, I'll go get oncology. Oh, I have an issue, go to the hospital. But you don't even know where the issue came from. Oh, it was in my family. It's genetic. And people are just like flippant about disease and flippant about the hospital system and its place in your community. When I was in Florida, and there's oncology clinics on every fucking corner in Lake City, Florida. So many, well, I'll say so many, but there was enough where you're like, you throw a rock, you'll hit an oncology clinic. You throw a rock, you'll hit, a ambulance, another hospital, one of those minute clinics, right? Where you walk in and you get seen and then you walk out with antibiotics so you can fight that war at home and attack your body at home. Oh, people don't even look at that as anything strange. They accepted it. It's great. It's fine. And there's the morgues everywhere, right? Not in the morgues, I'm sorry. Funeral homes all over the place. And they're okay with it. Hey, it's great. It's great, right? And so that should tell you that you are in a great civil war, because no matter what, when you are at home, you're either fighting with your own demons or you're fighting demons of the other people in your home and their demons along with your own. So imagine if you had more than just your husband or wife or even a son or a daughter. But now you have 5 or 10 people. Can you imagine the kind of wars that are going on when you have so many people and have friends all the time coming over? All the time? Can you imagine the microbial wars that are going on? Oh my Lord. And then when you go to work and when you're out there, but really, when you go to work, you go to work. But when you come home, when you relax and your body isn't in defense mode, keeping those things at bay so you can still keep doing whatever you're doing. When you're at home and you're relaxing, that's when the war of defense begins, and some people don't wake up from those wars. They die suddenly in their sleep. That's what happens all the time. So your home is the battleground. It's the silent wars when you think about it. I mean, not so silent when you're coughing and sneezing and blowing your nose, but it's not like, your hand-to-hand combat. And so the casualties end up in the hospital. And so here's the Gettysburg Address. Notice the number 7, right? I said 7 seems to be an ongoing thing. It's appearing again. Okay, so when you think about the Gettysburg Address that was said during that Gettysburg where Abraham Lincoln was speaking about the Civil War and speaking about, what's going on, why people were to honor the dead because of the meaning of the Union and getting rid of slavery and all of that. And so 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty. Okay, so you think about your house. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That was the intent, but we know women and men in households, especially traditional households, they're not created equal, but that was the intent. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war, and that is the home. Because you are in a civil war with your husband, your wife, your kids, okay? And so let me read this again. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So it hasn't happened yet. They're in a war to develop that. Now we are engaged in a great civil war called marriage and relationship and friends and family, testing whether that nation or any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war called your house. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field or a portion of your house, the family room, as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. And how many people have buried somebody recently? How many? It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion, that we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Okay? Okay? That was the Gettysburg Address. That was about the Great Civil War. And now we are in a war of generations of people and family, generations of microbes in your body and in your family. You have, your millennials, you have your Gen Z, you have your Generation X, you have your Generation Y, you have your boomers and silent generation. And so, this next thing we're reading, I'm making broad strokes. Obviously, there's exceptions to rules, but predominantly what you see out there in the population, not only the gender wars, but also the generation wars, the domestic wars of how you were raised, what values you were raised with, religion, belief systems, assumptions about what's going on, trying to figure out the positive and negative balancing forces and which one to you is positive and which one to you is negative, and people are going to disagree on which side is positive and which side is negative. And so then the war of ideologies. And so when you think about even the evolution of the next advancement, the next Industrial Revolution. You think about it, it was always a 3-generation rule, whether it was from 1776 or it's in a family in America or in the UK or anywhere else. It was always a 3-generation rule. And it was always a civil war. It's always has been at the micro level, because when you're war against your brother, like someone said, that remember in the Abrahamic religions, it is the Jews and the Muslims are like long lost brothers at war with each other. Cain versus Abel? That's kind of what's going on in the Middle East. Okay, Cain Cain basically destroyed Abel. But, people think that the Jews are Cain, but that's not really so much true. But you see that there is a conflict between two very similar people, who one has evolved so much because they had to, because they were constantly attacked. Remember, the more that you're attacked, the stronger you're going to be if you survive those attacks. The suffering is what makes you stronger. And Jews have suffered for centuries, for thousands of years. And so, the Muslims came around many years later after the Jews were first established. And so, yeah, it's like the younger brother just, antagonizing the older brother. And eventually the older brother's going to be like, dude, I'm done with this. I'm taking you out. And that's kind of what's going on right now. But not so much the Palestinians, who think about it. It's more like the extremists. Okay? Because there's Muslims out there that understand what's going on, and they're willing to work with the Christians and the Jews and the West. And there are other Muslims that are just not ready to do that. They're just not. Okay, so we don't want to paint too much of a broad stroke, and I kind of did that, so I retract that. But there are some Christians, some Jews, and some Muslims are so extreme that they're going to have to figure out how to work together. So it was always the 3-generation rule. Gen X, the forgotten generation, raised by the silent gens, probably have a better chance. Okay, so my husband's raised by boomers. I was raised by silent gens. We definitely have very different ways of doing things. So it is positive and negative. And sometimes there is chemistry. And that's why we're still together, because I still find him attractive. He's highly testosterone. I was highly estrogenic, but I've balanced out my hormones, so I'm not as triggered as I was. And so I see the differences in how I was raised. And I see the differences in how he was raised and who raised him. And it's not bad. He's an excellent human being. It's just different ways of looking at things. Okay? And he's more in the mainstream and more into being accepted by it. Because, yeah, when you have to work for a company, you don't always have to be part of whatever, the things that go on in the company. But he is a company man. I'm not. I'm more about evolution. And he's Mr. Consistent. And you have to have that. You have to have the evolution like me, and you have to have the consistency like him. The infrastructure. My husband's the infrastructure. I'm the fucking evolution. You have to have those two work together, or else you'd be so evolution, always in conflict and then destruction, or everyone should stay stagnant. When you have two people who are so consistent, and that's it, then you stay stagnant and you die together. That's what happens in a lot of these families. They die together. Husband and wife go over the cliff, not too long after each other. Okay, or you have two people who are so evolutionary, and they're always in conflict, trying to change each other all the time. And then alcohol, drugs, and sex, and cheating, and fuck. And then they're done. And they have children along the way, because that's where all the fireworks, started, was when they wanted to have children. And then the children are the trophies of those fireworks. And now these kids are like, what the hell is going on here? And then there's divorce. Okay? And so, anyways, yeah, that's, so Gen X, the forgotten generation, raised by silent gens, probably have a better chance. Especially in this environment. Because being popular and having a huge friend base is going to do you in. Because we're in a civil war of the microbes. Boomers raising Gen X and millennials, nope. Though there's always exceptions. But for the most part, yeah, a boomer raising Gen X, I've dated those too. I've seen their families. It's hard to get away from the boomer family, because they have money, they have a lot of people in the family, it's comfortable, and you're not going to want to suffer if you haven't really made you suffer, because you've had money and someone always taking care of things for you and paying for your education and supporting you through all of your educational endeavors, and, you know, you have a friends base and all that, who's going to want to get away from that? Who's going to want to step away from that? So yeah, boomers raising Gen X and millennials, yeah. Nope. They have never had to suffer, really. Suffering is not really part of that whole situation. So millennials and Gen Z and boomers and Gen X raised by boomers are the weakest. Why? Because they haven't really suffered. I mean, yeah, relative suffering. What does that mean? But when you think about stepping away from all of the trappings of wealth, can you see someone who's been raised in wealth step away from wealth? Even though I was raised in upper middle class, doesn't mean that I had everything. Okay? Yeah, I had shelter, I had food, but at 18 I was out the door and I left before that, and it was a struggle. It was a war. It was a war every fucking day. Every fucking day was a war on some level. Okay? So no, it wasn't comfortable. It was, you know, yeah, but it was always constantly kissing up and kissing the ring. So you didn't have to be like, you know, punished for something stupid or told or said, oh, you can't have this or do something. And then it was psychological. It was a lot more psychological. I mean, yeah, corporal punishment is prevalent everywhere. And it wasn't so bad that you turned into Charles Manson, but it was always a war. Even when we had birthday parties, it was still always a war. Okay. And so anyways, I'm not saying that some people weren't raised in wars of some sort, but I'll say this, that when big families, they have their own shit going on, and I'm not saying everyone has a perfect world, but I don't want to discount that someone doesn't suffer on some level, because everyone had to deal with something in their family, whatever it was. But somebody was always bailing somebody out. I mean, have you ever, when you think about it, I've been in my own apartment by myself with nobody around, by myself. I don't know. I mean, it's all relative. Everyone's shit's relative. But I will say this. Can you see how many people could even do what I'm doing? Or even wrap their mind around it? What is it? Audrey and Tanya, Gen X. Who is it? John? Pip is somewhere between the Gen X and Y, or millennial. And they're the most, I see them watching me every fucking day. Well, that's not a coincidence. That's Gen X mentality. Could I see a boomer watch me every day? Could I see a millennial like actually tune in when I'm doing this every day? They might watch on the side, maybe peripherally. I haven't seen it. It's a very small niche of people that actually understand this. Okay, so what I'm saying is millennials, Gen Z, and boomers, and Gen X raised by boomers are the weakest. They might have their own bullshit to deal with, but they are the weakest. They're weak. Maybe it's even because of the addictions. It's a rich man's disease, right? So they're the weakest. So they're dealing with addictions. They're going to the hospital all the time, getting things nipped and tucked and sucked out, given positions, inheriting wealth. Okay? And so it's not to say they didn't go through their own bullshit, but when you think about the hospital system, that right there weakens people generationally. All right, so boomers are the third leg of the Great Wars. Weakest generation in the set. Greatest generation, silent gens. Boomers, weak and most prolific, raising millennials and some Gen X, and they do not see how hard the greatest generation had to work to survive. They reaped the benefits and lived high on the hog. Remember the 80s, the 70s? The most spoiled, even spoiling their children to the point of destruction. The war, that was the 80s. Drugs, alcohol, family, sex, so much sex and war. That's why there's so much alcoholism. That's why there's so much drug addiction, cannabis, the love drug. And family. You see how many families came out of the 1960s and 70s? I'm Gen X, raised by silent gens, which is why I do not hang out with millennials or boomers that much. Believe me, I've been around so many different millennials and boomers, or people raised by them. I'm way too fucking different. I'm actually a minority when you think about it. And that makes sense why I'm a minority. Because when you think about like other people that I was raised with, the siblings, they're in the mainstream. They have their 3 or 4 children. I don't have any kids. They're out there doing what they do based upon their area, whether it's religion or family and all that, because they have kids. And so I was raised very differently, even from my own siblings. Okay? And so, yeah, I don't hang out with millennials or boomers because they don't fucking get me. They don't. I tried to fit in. I tried to be an alcoholic and a drug addict. Didn't work. I tried to be a party girl. It didn't work. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to survive that lifestyle. Remember, I was asked a couple of years ago, a long time ago, why don't you drink with them? Because I'd die. I would die living that lifestyle. I couldn't do that. Oh, but I tried. Even in California, I tried. There's no fucking way. I couldn't live the lifestyle. There was something more that I had so much to deal with. And so I'm a Gen X raised by silent gens, which is why I do not hang out with millennials or boomers. Okay? But even then, some Gen X on my end that is a boomer. That's right. Yeah. Boomers spoil their kids. I was never fucking spoiled. So they don't even understand me, or even care to, really. They were raised differently. That is the difference. It is okay. I'm okay with it. It took me 7 years to be okay with being a minority. Oh, I resisted it for such a long... I tried to fit in. Oh, my God. And if you are and have been raised by boomers and millennials, good luck, right? Some of you can break the mold once you realize it. Others, yeah, there's no freaking way. You're never going to walk away from the trappings of wealth. And that includes social capital. You need people around you. People who have been raised in the boomer and millennial world, they need the family, they need the friends, they need the distractions and the social capital. You see how weak these generations are by observing parenting styles and the children. It's right in your face. The theory is it takes 3 generations to lose wealth in a family. The first generation built the wealth via strategy and innovation. The second generation maintained it and saw how hard their parents had to work to build the wealth. The third generation destroyed the wealth and spent all the money and have no real respect for working hard at building the wealth to sustain it. And so I used the example of Joe Kennedy built the wealth. JFK sustained it on some level, and then he was groomed to be what he was. And then JFK Jr. spoiled, and he died. Married a model, very cliche. The rich, they marry the models. They marry the Stepford wives, the ones that were programmed to have sex and look good on paper, look good, nice pedigree, be an influencer, because look at, the Hiltons, married to the Rothschilds or some other dude. And Paris married some dude, I don't know who he is. But Nikki Hilton married a Rothschild. And she's a Hilton heiress. That's perfect pedigree. That's basically right now the JFK Juniors of the world. Spoiled by it, and then die in it. And have their Stepford wives, their arm candy. And that's all over. The royalty and the titans of industry play this game of little microbial royalties. Not microbial, well, lay royalties. I mean, you look in Silicon Valley, the same shit. You have these nice big houses. Chick's hot, right? She's skinny, wears Fendi and Gucci and all that stuff. Husband makes, $300,000 a year, $500,000, maybe $1 million, who knows? And they're buying everything under the sun, going to the cool places, traveling the cool places. They're playing that game. That's the system wants you to get trapped in that wealth and be spoiled by it and die in it, because you'll never get away from it. How do you go from eating caviar to eating top ramen? There's no way you can do that. So they die in the trappings of wealth. So most of you out there who are all about money and status and shit, you're all JFK Jr. You're in the trappings of wealth and you'll die in it, because how could you survive without it? The reason why I could sit here at home and writhe in agony as my body's pushing shit through my system. Because I've been in places where I was by myself, writhing in agony and crying over some stupid shit that happened. Another lesson I had to learn. Okay? And I could sit there and just cry in the darkness of my little apartment or room that I rented. Going like, how the hell do I get out of this situation now? But can you see some millennial who's been given everything? Can you see? No. There's no fuck. Even Gen Xer? No. Somebody will go in and save them. Swoop in and save them. Never have to suffer and fight for anything. And so there's no way to change the educational system run by generations of people who are not strong enough to suffer for the consequences of their actions. People are like, oh, we got to change the education system. No, the education system is made for the children that were produced. Okay? If you want to change the way society, change yourself and represent. But there's too many people that have been brainwashed by a specific lifestyle and belief system. And they don't have a lot of the substance to deal with suffering and understanding how to make the connections. They're there to take a state test to be relatively educated based upon the needs of society. That's why they switched from older, different like we had. We didn't have we had a state test once, I think it was once a year. Now they're getting tested like every quarter in math, ELA, social sciences, science, and history. And I used to work in the, in the data and accountability office, going through those tests and developing graphs to show how proficient or lacking some of the students are in their scores. But now these kids are going to be taught to a test, and then some of the colleges even lowered the standards so they're not competing so heavily with other people who have been given a lot more. And yeah, their hiring practices are going to be different. They already have the geniuses out there. They can develop genius just like that. The system knows how to do that. And so that way everybody can compete. They're going to level the playing field. Compete on a level playing field. Okay. So the education system is what it is. And they're going to bring in sexuality too. Because, that's also on the table for people. What sex are they going to be? How they're going to do it? And that's also part of the depopulation agenda. How are you going to manifest your... I don't know, your desires without taking somebody out and enslaving them or taking from them. Sometimes you have to do it yourself. And that's how people sometimes, because some people can't keep up with some people's appetites. And so you have to then release your own self into the universe without taking people down with you. But that's the civil war, is that people are releasing themselves and the people around them too, by conscripting them into their own little personal war of, oh gosh, you got to get me off type of shit. And that's what these poor girls are being forced into, because what else are they going to do if they don't have it here academically to further themselves? They're going to end up on OnlyFans or married off to someone who's going to just keep taking from them until they die. And so there's no way to change the educational system run by generations of people who are not strong enough to suffer the consequences of their actions. And so the standards are lower a little bit. And so you must save yourself and let it all play out. It's out of your hands. So understand my strategy, right? My world is not built for boomers or their millennials. Okay, really, unless you are already relatively self-sufficient. My world is not even for some Gen X raised by boomers. All right? When you have people around you, again, saving you at every turn, there's no way you're going to sit and be in pain for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, or sit and deal with making next to nothing. Because you can't go to work, 80 hours like the other dude. Because that's what I thought a couple of years ago, that you'll outlast people out there, not in this environment. And I realized that when this environment has changed and it's highly accelerated, and now you're in microbial competition with other people, and so being out there, whether in an office in a closed environment, or at some grocery store, or some restaurant or nightclub, you'll be sick a lot more often. You know why? Because you will be taking on so much microbial diversity, causing fornication, mucus. You're going to have to keep releasing those demons, or have to get cured and suffer the consequences of potential cancer, fast-moving cancer. And so now I realize that, you're going to have to now pull back on your lifestyle Scale down so you don't have to work as much. Just like Janet Peterson was saying, she's scaled down. She doesn't have a crazy car payment. Scaled down her occupation so she's not working so hard, taking care of her health. Both her and her significant other are on the same page. Because yeah, you can't compete out there, really out there, unless you're at home working and you're not dealing with somebody else. But if you have to be out there, you have to be strong enough to release those demons every single freaking night. I was thinking, like, if I had to work at Giant Eagle, if my husband was down for who knows what, okay, whether it's indefinitely, because if it's a work injury, then workman's comp can pay, the bulk of the bills, the main bills. But if it's like terminal, and he was still relatively okay, type of thing, and I didn't have to be around 24/7. If I had to work at a Giant Eagle or any other public place, I mean, I could work at home, but I don't know. I mean, I could do that, but it's all depend. I don't know. I would rather be out there, but I would have to seriously be strong and release those demons every single day. What do you mean? I'd have to be home and blow my nose overnight because I'd be taking on so much of the ectoplasm in that environment. And so, when you do that, you'll be exhausted. You'll go to work exhausted the next day, but you'll keep doing it until you're so tired because you'll keep releasing those demons, and then you'll sleep on the weekend. That's how you're going to have to survive. If you have to work, and hopefully it's not even full-time. Hopefully it's even part-time. That's probably even better, is to work part-time and still make your bills. So you have time to sleep. That's the thing. You need to have time to sleep and recover from releasing those demons every single day. And my system is so activated that, when I go into a crowded room in this highly accelerated environment, I have to release those demons. And I'm exhausted the next day, but I just saved myself a potential fast-moving cancer because I have an open immune system. Okay? And so when people are gluttons for pleasure, they will screw themselves out of existence, and that is their own undoing. So you cannot save people from that. Save yourself. It's out of your hands. Just observe the patterns and watch people. If you were lucky enough to be exposed to and raised by a silent gen and greatest generation as a Gen X, you might have a chance. You weren't infected by a boomer's mentality or greed is good. Okay, you're not Gordon Gekko. You weren't infected by a Gordon Gekko out there. And there's a slimy salesman that want everything from you. As a Gen X raised by the two older generations had the opportunity to see how wealth, drugs, sexual excess ruined an entire generation, but society did get the innovation. But at what cost? Now watch the future generations of alpha beta generations be ruined by the millennial parents and boomer grandparents through excess. Died suddenly. Just watch your friends and family. Do not intervene. The spells are too strong. Just watch the boomers and millennials and even some Gen Xers raised by boomers. The programming of excess is there. Once you choose to be aware of this, then you have the power to choice. That is why the system is making things economically harder, so you learn how to strategize and prioritize if you can take personal accountability, okay? So suffering made me strong and adaptable. The power of suffering supported correctly is the superpower. Okay? There's nothing like denying oneself a pleasure when you don't have to. If you don't have to buy that cake, don't buy it. When you're like, I want a pizza, but then you're like, I have food at home, I'm not going to buy that pizza. You know how joyful it is where you don't have to, just because you have, $50 in your hand and you could buy a pizza if you wanted to, that you put the $50 down and you eat whatever you have at home? That's an amazing discipline and self-control. Money doesn't burn a hole. Okay? And so the power of suffering supported correctly is the superpower. Remember, I'm trying to help and save you via my background, okay? I mean, I know I can't save you, but that's my intention. Remember, all of us have great intentions. Even Hamas trying to save people from Israel and resist and save, but people's perceptions of who the enemy is kind of skewed. And so then you have to defend yourself. And may the strongest person, win. Because that's what it comes down to. The strongest, most strategic, the most innovative is going to win any war. Okay? It's not even in numbers. It's not even strength when you think about it. Because again, I saw somebody who told me their strategy of beating giant men at racquetball. It was a strategy of how to get that ball, basically kiss in the corner and kiss on the floor, where even the giant man can go and dive and get that ball. She won every time when she used that strategy. So it's not about might, it's about strategy. And you could be 2 foot tall and out-strategize Goliath. That's what it comes down to. That's what Hollywood is trying to tell you too. The writers. Okay? So remember, I'm trying to help you and save you via my background. What I'm saying is not meant to shame or insult you. I'm not your enemy. I was just trained differently. I am no different than you. Remember, we all were built from survival and trying to save each other from a common enemy, whatever that is. No one in your role will give you this info. Not, even the system is not giving you this info. And so I do respect everyone on my Facebook, or I would not stick my neck out daily. And so then, when you are in a civil war of family and tight-knit groups of friends, the children and the parents are competing for resources, okay? And there is only one winner. It's the government. Remember that before you conscript yourself and your children in the civil war of survival called family. If you're already in a family, then you're all going to have to compete, and one winner, okay? And then even that winner might die if they don't redirect. And so, but if you have kids, I don't know, man. The draw of sexuality and family and friends and social constructs, the system, like I'm saying, the system is going to have to force the infertility, because people are not going to be able to control themselves. And so the system will force the infertility. All of you will end up in the morgue. I mean, all of you faster in this environment. Do you really think a small child can compete with a relatively substantial adult in a highly accelerated environment? So I guess people choose to gamble for love, and they're doing that. I can see on my Facebook, everyone's looking for love, even though love has been proven to be destructive. But I guess they want to have fun, right? And so the J world is the new culture. And I was never intended to know what I know. I was intended to be destroyed or enslaved by a paramour, or be silenced through my disease. Remember, I had PMDD, and I was getting bigger, and I knew I had a lipoma down there that was movable. But if I had not have done the J world, that would have turned into some kind of ovarian cancer, cervical cancer. Yeah, I remember what I was trained for, is to be, hot and be cute and have fun type of thing, with some academic in my background. And so that's where that new growth was coming from, was that area. And I know if I hadn't done what I did and opened up my system, then my immune system would not have been able to dissolve that lipoma, when you think about it, it was a fatty type of tumor, and release it through my immune system. I would have been dealing with some kind of something, I know, or I died, or who knows. All right. And so, so I was intended to be destroyed or enslaved by a paramour, or be silenced through disease. What do you mean by destroyed or enslaved by a paramour? Because there are men out there that will not allow their wife or their girlfriend to speak out against anything or change or do anything other than what they think is appropriate and that looks good for the family and for him. And so, or there are men out there that will destroy their wife, okay, and shut her up or enslave her by making her have so many children through the religion, okay? And so I was intended to be destroyed or enslaved by a paramour, or be silenced through disease. How many husbands out there would allow their wives or girlfriends to speak out and change? Now, I know Jason had a little bit of a hard time with it the last couple of years. He's getting better at it. Okay, he gets it. I'm not going to be like those other chicks. I know he wanted me to be like an arm candy. He wanted me to be like those chicks out there that say nothing and are seen but not heard. When you think about it, that was his background. That's super traditional. He's a traditional dude, Gen X. Traditional dude raised by boomers in a world that is very traditional over here in Ohio. Okay? It's not so progressive out here. Maybe you go to the inner cities like Columbus, not so much Cleveland, but Columbus and maybe Cincinnati, maybe a little bit more progressive, maybe in the college system, maybe. But anywhere outside of those systems, super traditional. And the women don't have a lot of voice. And if they do have a voice, they're screaming in joy and orgasm, or they're screaming in pain, giving birth to somebody or something, right? That's what the women's roles here. I mean, that's seriously, that's what the roles of women here are. That's what it is. They go to college, but they don't make it through the college. If they do, then they're stuck doing something, and they still get married and have a bunch of children. And so how many people right now are silenced through their disease? They have basically given up. And they would never dare say anything different on Facebook because they would get bullied by their friends. So people stick to what is safe. Oh, I know that the jails that people are in. Oh, I know it. And when you're in jail, and people, when massive amounts of people are in jail, they group against those who are free. And then how do they punish you? They just don't talk to you. And that's okay. But you know that's what it is. People are trapped. And when they're trapped, they don't like those who are free. And I'll tell you, being free, I don't say it's lonely, but being free is different. It's a very different existence that most people will never ever have a taste of. I'm not fully 100% free, but I'm to the point where I have a lot of peace and harmony in my world. A lot of it, without rest and peace. Remember, I'm still straddling the old world and new world. And my husband's doing awesome. And I'm telling you, this trucking industry is so great for a relationship that's trying to evolve, because people get time to be on their own and figure some shit out. It's when someone is in your face every freaking day is when you lose yourself. That's why people have to go take vacations, because they're constantly being messed with by somebody. Okay? So people stick to what is safe. So they play it safe and toe the line and act like some fucking drone clone. In the meantime, they're dying inside, trying to put on a happy face, even through their own anger. Many people do have anger issues. But they also have no more fight left in them to save themselves, because they have exhausted themselves in politics and in religion. There's nothing left for themselves. They have big families. They have a huge friends base. That's the war. That's the Civil War. Managing so many mouths to feed, because friends are dying for attention. And friends are hungry. Okay? And so what's in your body, when you think about all the different parasitic cultures in your body, also attract people out there. So when you have so many diverse parasitic entities in your body, you're going to have a huge friends base. You're going to have a huge family base, because those two worlds coincide. When you finally release the demons and you streamline your processes, you simplify your life, where you don't want the drama in your body or out there, all of a sudden your friends base is now scaled down to almost nothing. And you don't suffer so much from disease and evolution. And you're not feeding so many mouths. You realize I eat maybe about once a day, and when I do eat that once a day now, it's like I'm eating like the beef stroganoff. So I have this beef with the milk, sour cream, okay, and the onions and the mushrooms and the noodles. And I actually had, that's what I did, that's right, I had the leftover pizza from Hungry Howie's, and then I also had the beef stroganoff. So I had at least 2 things. But I don't really need a lot. I'm not, needing 3 meals a day. I even tell you, I haven't had anything except for my coffee and cream. But when the frequency changes, and there's growth, and there's things that my body's going through, then I have increased hunger and increased hives. But no hives this morning. I may have had 1 hive yesterday afternoon, 1 hive, and that was it. Okay? And so I've lessened the amount of mouths to feed in my body. It's when somebody is starving so much parasitic cultures in their body, they have to be around people to feed all those cultures in their body and their own perception of what fitting in means. But they also have to feed the addiction to attention and energy. Okay? And so that huge friend bases and huge families that have a lot of parasitic infections, they have cancer, disease, chronic illness, addictions, autoimmune disorders, and pulling away from that is like leaving a cult. Even me, when I was pulling away from the things the last couple of years, you saw what I was dealing with the last couple of years. And me pulling away from the traditions of going out every weekend, hanging out with people, and the fight with that, with people's issues, and being drawn into the drama of people's relationships. And I'm like, I can't deal with it. No different when I, 20 years ago, when some chick was having an issue that I don't even really know very well, but we had a kindred spirit because we were both temps. And I said, I'm done. I can't be part of this. I can't be pulled into this. And I walked away. I saved myself. I've been saving myself, running away from home, and all for ever since day one, I've been saving myself. Today's not going to change. Last 5 years wasn't going to change. If I see something that was going to compromise my husband, myself, and our relationship, I had to leave. And if he had to stay because he needed to get through his own whatever, that's fine. Do what you got to do, husband. Do what you got to do, wife. But I'm saving myself. And I don't care what you do out there. If you need to go hang out with people, fine. But people do show their colors out there, and then you have to pick and choose what you want to entertain on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And some people are really needy out there, like super needy, that they will suck the life out of you if you allow them to. And that's the hardest thing of all, is realizing that's what is destroying people, is the fact they can't tear themselves away from really needy people. And it literally is sucking the life out of them. But they also have no more fight left in them to save themselves because they have exhausted themselves in politics and religion. There's nothing left for themselves. They have big families. They have a huge friends base. And that's the war. Managing so many mouths to feed because friends and family are dying for attention. And friends are hungry. And family cannibalizes family, no different than an aging process when their own body destroys itself. See, when people are aging out, it's the juvenile cells that aren't purposed for anything particular keeping you alive are just now eating the infrastructure. Okay? And so it's like having your children basically feed off of you. Just like the vampire. Feeding off of your bank account, your trust fund, your body, your mind, your spirit, everything. And when kids are like, oh, mom and dad, babysit my kids. Oh, mom and dad, can I borrow $1,000? Can you co-sign? Oh, mom and dad, you're so amazing. You see these kids are laying on thick to their parents because they need their parents so that way they can go off and have fun. Remember, these millennials who partied end up having 2, 3, 5 kids, and their parents didn't really, they're boomers or whatever, Gen X boomers. And they've now conscripted themselves to be the backup, to babysit the kids, to bail out their kid when they're in trouble. So yeah, these parents, these younger parents have their cake and eat it too. And then guess what these kids are taught? Oh yeah, someone's always going to bail me out when something happens. Consume, consume, consume. Someone's going to save me. Find the people in the world that will have no boundaries so I can suck the life out of them when possible. And so family cannibalizes family, no different than an aging person when their own body destroys itself. People are spent. So I was not trained as a fighter when you think about it. If I was not trained as a fighter when you think about it, and I don't mean causing harm to anyone in retribution, like in Tyler Perry Medea, where she finally got the nerve to go and throw the grits in his face and hit him with the frying pan. I'm like, oh my God, they went a little far with that. Never do that. If you can walk away and get out, do it. It wasn't safe for Medea to leave the house and let them, because he hit her and he could have killed her. But they were trying to show that you need to fight back, but that was the way that they had to show it, through violence. But I'm telling you, if I was not trained as a fighter, when you think about it, and I don't mean causing harm to anyone in retribution, like in Tyler Perry Medea Family Reunion, if I have not fought for my voice, I would be dead. I am the monkey wrench in this bullshit game of civil war, but it is necessary, obviously. But I was not intended to survive this type of memory. You have a chance. But you are in a great civil war, and this is a formidable war, and it's not just 4 years, 1 month, 2 days, like the American Civil War. Now you discover you are in 100 years war since the 1960s. It's the domestic war. And your home and body are the battlegrounds. Your friends and family are the enemy, even though you love them. It is survival of the fittest. All of you are competing for resources. And people are dropping like flies. And so when you finally realize the wars that you're in, that's when you can potentially win it. But people don't realize the wars that they're in, and they keep entering into these wars, not realizing, completely oblivious, and everything's accepted, right? And then when you get maimed or become a casualty, then you're admitted into the hospital. You're admitted, you get diagnosed. You're under therapies. And so I think, like, well, when was the first hospital system? Because that would have been the first time there was a mass casualty event, right? Oh, it was in Iraq, Baghdad, right? The earliest documented general hospital was built in 805 in Baghdad. I guess that's AD. The earliest documented general hospital was built about a century later in 805 in Baghdad by the vizier to the Caliph Harun al-Rashid. And so I said the hospital system is a system of casualties. Domestic and foreign wars, from family all the way to outsiders and strangers, microbial wars, hand-to-hand combat, to virtual wars, to rocket-propelled grenades. Humans have been at war with itself for thousands of years, and the hospital system is a proof. A system full of casualties of domestic or a foreign war, and like the American Civil War of the 1860s, just like the American Civil War of the 1860s. And I remember some of those scenes in Gone with the Wind. And they were amputating legs, amputating everything. And imagine if these kids could go to war overseas. They're going to go through the same shit. That's why there's no more conscription, because that was the last time was the Vietnam War. Now people are voluntarily going into because they're learning skills, they're learning survival, they're learning how to be a man or a woman. And sometimes it means dying for your country, whatever that means and whatever that entails. Some people survive the wars and they die in the civilian war because the war is still inside of them. Alcoholism, still remembering the scenes of war. It's crazy. That's what I'm saying. The J world, if you don't have any missing arms or legs or whatever, and you've been in war and seen some shit, yeah, the J world's going to bring up some shit, and you're going to have to release that, and it might be a little bit scary. That's why those that do the J world that have seen war and haven't had any amputations, you might need to have somebody watch you through that process, because the flashbacks might be a little bit intense. Just like those who are drug addicts or done all those psychedelics and they release those demons, and some of those memories do come up that, who knows? I tell you, the J world is like an exorcism. You're exorcising out the trauma, and that could be war, and that could be drug addiction, that could be domestic violence, same thing, war. I mean, it's pretty aggressive. That's why the system has the medical system, to cut out the disease or cut out the trauma or drug it. Because some people might act pretty aggressive when those demons come to surface. That's the whole Catholic Church, that the other side of it, and also the horror movies showing you some people have been programmed and are under so much drug therapy to keep those demons at bay. And so the J world releases those demons, but you have to be strong enough to deal with the demons walking out your front door. No different when you're harboring people in your house that overstay their welcome, and you don't want to be mean to them because they might kill you in your own fucking house. And so you feed them and be nice to them and find a way to get them out, and then reinforce your fucking house so they don't ever come back in again. Okay? That's what you have to do. Like having somebody who's giant in your house that you really can't beat, but you have to strategize releasing them and making sure that they're okay as they're out. You give them a little bit of food and give them a little bit of money so they can get their own place, and tell them go get a job, and then they're done. They're out of your house. That's what it's like releasing the demons. You have to survive the demons that are in your house first and on their way out the door. And do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the innovation, the strategy? Do you have the food? It's pretty bad. And so I already read that. And so, yeah, when I was in Hawaii and that Jesus cult, I was like, yep, because they actually are using Hawaii, Oahu, to dump a lot of the homeless from all over the world. Like Hawaii is going to be the dumping grounds because it's warm, better than suffering out there, right, in Connecticut in the middle of winter. But there's a lot of drugs, alcohol, obviously, marijuana, methamphetamines, fentanyl, people will, already, even in San Francisco, and it's climate change, it might be warmer in San Francisco. So yeah, or in even places like Philadelphia. I don't know how people survive in Philadelphia in the winter, but there's a lot of zombies out there under the influence. So the system is giving people whatever they want and letting them pass away through the pleasure and their addictions, through their family, their friends, carting them to flying them to Hawaii and releasing them. They're told, oh yeah, you'll have shelter, like that video. Yeah, I lived there for 6 months, and it was off the hook. I remember being on the bus, and someone gave me a dirty look, like, oh, I know you're from the state side. I wasn't a local. They call you Howley, right? I remember when I was on the bus, and I saw from the bus, looked at the bus stop, and some dude just went up to some stranger and just hit him, just all out cold cocked him. And I'm like, oh my God. And there's places in Oahu, like Waianae, where the locals, you don't mess with the locals out there. And it's not a friendly place for tourists. You have to stay in the tourist areas. You don't want to go out in some parts. Okay? And so, yeah, I lived there for 6 months. It was off the hook sometimes. I saw people beaten up at bus stops. You don't want to go in some areas in the island. It really is not a place to live for a long time. It's a place to party, figure out your direction, and then leave. A lot of methamphetamines and marijuana. And I'm sure it's worse even today. I'm sure it's worse now. And so Oahu is where 90% of the population of Hawaii lives. So when people were tripping out about Lahaina, they want to have these places now be reconfigured. And they want evolutionary people. They don't want generations of people having a bunch of kids and eating everything out of house and home. They want now evolution. And that's what happened in Lahaina. People don't like it. I'm sorry. It's the way of the fucking world now. It's just, it is. You gotta see the writing on the wall. If you don't see the writing on the wall and you resist, you won't survive resisting. Sorry. So I'm sure it's worse now. And so I've met nice locals, and it was a great transition place, because it was. I worked there. I worked in Honolulu. I had a lot of fun. Let me tell you, if I did what I did today back then, like sleeping on the beach, I had a mango margarita and just passed out on the beach, got a sunburn. Now I probably would have been either raped or trafficked or who knows what. I don't know, but I'm sure. Who sleeps on the beach by themselves? And it was over where I was at. I was Lani Kai. Sorry, like Lani Kai or one of those. Yeah. And so it wasn't good for me long term, because you do feel trapped. What are you going to do? Living in a vacation spot, right? So you do feel trapped. So then, the parasites. Parasites is not like you attack anything that you think is like parasitic. That's why people who are taking dog dewormers and horse deworming. Hold on. Oh my God. It's like as soon as I said that, my body was like, time to release the demons. Holy shit. Okay. Wow. So people are taking these dog dewormers and horse dewormers, and they're making those little boa constrictors in their body so large. All right. So I had that picture of a person with a worm in their mouth that's eating at their teeth, right? And so someone in these Sunday groups said, witnessing what feels like more than the usual hip, shoulder, and knee replacements, I know of 2 people who've been told they need a knee replacement. One is waiting to get clearance. Surgery was scheduled and they found AFib. I know 2 recent hip replacements and 1 shoulder replacement. Seems like a lot to me. Oh yeah, they're all over. So many people in my world, on my Facebook. Yeah, body's deteriorating. It's all the antibodies, right? Like I said, people are so full of antibodies. Well, those antibodies also can be parasitic entities that became so numerous that they didn't have a purpose, wasn't allowed to release, and so what are they doing? They're snacking on the body, deteriorating the bones, the collagen. You can have so much heat to the body too that you melt off the collagen, turn it into gelatin, feeding those little demons. I mean, when someone is so obese, they're holding so many colony-forming units of parasitic infections, and they have a lot of friends and family. Well, that's not a coincidence. Okay? What is in here reflects out there. And when you have so many that sucks the life out of you, then you don't have enough energy for so many friends and family, because now it's just you. But see, I have a mixture of both. I'm not too big, I'm not too large. I know what happens when you have too many friends and family. You will collect the colony-forming units of that diversity, causing so much fornication and replication that you'll be blowing up, and then you still want to stay in the game, right? When you're trying to fit in with people, and so you cure it, and then you get bigger and bigger, or you develop a cancer, and it sucks you out from the inside. And so you don't want to be too skinny in this world, even in the J world. You don't want to be too skinny in the J world, staying at home, or too skinny out there, hanging out with people, and you don't want to be too big at home, because what are you cultivating? What are you incubating? That's going to basically strangulate you, like a boa constrictor. And you don't want to be too big out there, because you'll add on more of the colony-forming units, and people are not getting ahead of it. Let me tell you, there are people in the J world that are not going to really understand the J world, because they're not getting ahead of their situation. They're not releasing the demons. They can't stay home. They're the major breadwinner, and they are in churches. They're around people all the time, causing that offspring to develop. And so someone said expected 70s and 80s, but a lot of hip and knees. Okay, and all right, it's fine. I don't need to belabor that point. Yeah, people are deteriorating. And so I said, wow, what did I say? Jesus Christ, I said a lot. Both men and women need to drink a lot more milk and cream so they can release the demons. Give them the hormones, like the testosterone, to go fight the battles, like giving men into your body to fight the battles. So when I'm here and I'm estrogen, okay, right, I'm a woman, and my husband is mostly testosterone. And so when I'm here, I mean, I can protect myself, but it's like having a man around to protect you. The milk, the testosterone, is like a man around to protect you and release the demons and fight your battles. All right? So both men and women need to drink a lot more milk and cream, and they need to blow their nose. They must release those demons through milk and food. People are being eaten alive from the inside. The boa constrictors in their bodies are snacking on their infrastructure. Okay? When you're getting up and your freaking ankle breaks, when you fall down and you break a wrist, yeah, you're being deteriorated. You're being eaten alive by the microbes, the antibodies stuck in your body. Okay? Fertility, antibodies are all different types of life forms in the body. Sometimes the life forms turn into the blobs, into babies. Fertility, right? That's what they said. The parasites, people are like, oh, you should be affected by a parasite to give you the fertility. What do you think they do in these fertility clinics? What do you think they do when a girl doesn't have her period and she wants to go and trigger her period? They give her hormones, but yes, there's some parasites that do trigger fertility. But they're not going to tell you that, because that would be too scary. So they say it's hormones. Okay, what are the hormones? Or what form are these hormones in? Well, you'll never really know for sure, but you can guess. All right, so fertility antibodies are all different types of life forms in the body. Sometimes those life forms turn those blobs into babies. All the different parasites in your body turn into a baby when triggered fertility, sexual reproduction, or all of those blobs turned into semen or seeds, right? And then they encourage you to go hunt for someone to inseminate. That's the dating pool. That's the war you're in right now. We have men and women and non-binaries hunting each other to inseminate, even if you have no intention to have a baby, because now it's pleasure hunting, and people are lonely. So that's why you never attack what you think is a parasitic. You feed and release the demons. Right now, it's a horror movie for everybody, and it's all happening internally to people who are aging and falling apart, and it's all normalized. People are feeding the demons, but they are also keeping them inside. Those demons are trapped in the body because people are afraid to release. They're afraid to feel the pain of release, and they're afraid to shit. And then they use laxatives, so they break their own blood vessels, forcing the body to release, and it's counterproductive. You'll get even more constipated as the body fights back on you, forcing it to shit. Because remember, you're being commandeered by an entity that you have to systematically release. And it's not something you do with a fucking pill or a drink. They're afraid of food, right? And they develop more offspring, making the offspring stronger from all the remedies. Now look at the diet suddenly groups, right? So they're being eaten from the inside out. You're watching a shit show right now. Just so you know, eating worms in your food, right? And benefiting from the nutritional delivery is so much better than feeding the worms and keeping them locked and trapped in your body as they divert nutritional resources away from you like a child. Remember when that college professor said that kids are like parasites when he was mentioning how they were like in the body, and he received or she received so much flack from that? He or she wasn't wrong. Yes, children are parasitic in the body. That's the very nature of pregnancy, is you are hosting a parasite in your body, diverting resources away from you. That's why people get gestational sicknesses, gestational diabetes, gestational diseases, because that child is now weakening that mother's infrastructure. And so when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and now that mother is now she's so skinny. And of course, raising those kids takes so much from her. Yeah, they were exactly right. Scientifically, that professor was correct. But he or she couldn't say it publicly because they got backlash. Oh God, you can't call my kid a parasite. Fuck yeah, they are. Kids are parasitic. That's the very nature of children. They can't survive on their own. They have to feed off of mommy and daddy, whether inside the womb or out there, until they are 18 years old. And even then it's questionable if they can handle it on their own. So you have 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds are still feeding off of mom and daddy's tit. And why say daddy's tit? Because they're still feeding off of daddy. Daddy's still financing their world. Trust fund babies have a constant stream of revenue from mommy and daddy. Children are parasitic. That's the very nature of fucking children. Children are parasitic. I should say fucking children, but that's the very nature of children. They're parasitic. And they will suck the life out of you if you let them. And now they have a continent of parasitic cultures in their body, and the bigger you are, the more of them you have. But if you get small and you age, those continents of parasitic cultures are eating you out from the inside. Can you imagine what children deal with right now in this environment? I mean, I remember when I stuck my finger in my butt as a kid because I felt something itchy. I was itching down there in my butthole. I was like, what the hell? So I stuck my finger in my butt and pulled something out, and it was a little worm. It was a pinworm. I had pinworms as a kid, but they're supposed to have those because they help you digest stuff. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to attack them. They're part of what's supposed to be. But you have to be able to release those demons. The kids, I grew out of it. I don't have pinworms anymore, but kids have them because that's how they are able to, they're able to transition from being a kid, and those pinworms help them digest stuff and break stuff down. So you never attack pinworms. If you think your kid has a parasitic infection, go see a doctor. Don't treat any of that shit on your own. Do not, because you'll make it worse. Okay? So can you imagine what children have to deal with today, now, in this environment? That's why I'm saying it's not a children's world. They're up against so much. Woe is to anyone who's using animal prescription dewormers. You're just turning those microbes into boa constrictors. They don't appreciate the attack, and they will become stronger. And so in the beginning of the J world, my information did release many people's demons. Okay, and their asses were burning because they had so much of that heartburn acid. The amino acids, fatty acids that were, like when I had that heartburn. And it was burning coming up because I had so much of that jello on top of trying to release the demons from the alcohol. Oh, I was a mess that week. It was bad. Oh my God. I will never do that again. Okay? But, you know, when you're under the influence of alcohol, even after you thought you released it all and you had the hives and everything, you're making bad choices and doing too much of the jello because you're like, oh, jello can turn into collagen. Yeah. You never overdo anything like that. Your body goes through and does that on its own. You don't force it and overwhelm it. And so, yeah, so when we had the waterfalls and people were holding so much acid in their body, they were so acidic, and they finally released all the acid. Yeah, their asses were burning, so they had to put coconut on their butt and whatever. It was crazy. Okay? And so in the beginning of the J world, my information did release people's demons. I know I released a lot of colony forming units of parasitic cultures. And so I remember things that look like yellow mucus with all these little squigglies that looked like spermies that were attacking an egg. It could have been liver flukes. Who the hell knows? Remember, none of these parasites, when you think about it, by themselves in smaller numbers they're not bad. It's when they become so numerous to the point where it takes over, like a cancer, is when they become bad. And so you never attack things. When you think about it, if you had an open immune system, you wouldn't get cancer because the immune system would release the cancer cells. Cancer cells are just fast-moving, unpurposed juvenile cells that are allowed to grow so fast because the parent cells were not strong enough to release them out of the nest, which is your body. Because people have a closed immune system. They use remedies to stop the body from releasing. They push the demons back in the body using topicals, using deodorant, using so much oil and things to stop the pain. Using or eating a lot of spicy food. Okay? And so anyway, so I'm not saying use the J juice indefinitely, no, because if you use it so much, then you'll trap everything inside because you'll cure the body and you'll become constipated. And that's a whole other ball of wax that you don't want to deal with. But you will in this environment because you will be constipated and you'll have to pull out that crap. And I do pretty much almost every other day, every day. I have to in this environment. Because even though you poop, it's not enough. You have to really, literally cough and sneeze and blow your nose and get it out. And Western ways of doing things is not efficient enough. Because even the East, or even, what do you call it? Over there in the bidets. Okay, so you wash your ass with the bidets. No, you really have to get that. You really have to release that demon out of your body. And Mr. Hanky can be stubborn, okay? And though you don't talk about that in mixed company because people get weird around talking about that. But I'll say it here, I don't care. That's how I'm able to survive this. That's how I'm able to get so much mental clarity and innovation, surviving the environment, surviving being out there with people with diverse microbes, ectoplasm, spirits, and not be completely possessed and consumed and tunneled. And I'm saving my own life. So I have no problem speaking about this as frank as I do. And so I'm not saying use the J juice indefinitely, as you could also be waking up other things that will wake up anyways. And you have to eat all food. But people were releasing demons, and you have to pull out the demons out of your body, especially when you get very sick. So again, a couple of years ago, I was so sick. And the only way I got a little bit of relief to give me then the next strengthening after eating food was having to throw myself in the shower and pull it all out and flush it down the toilet and then regain my strength. And it was like Tootsie Rolls. And you have to literally understand your alimentary canal. And you have to cut your nails. And you have to wash your hands. And then you're like, ew, that's so gross. I don't want to be around her. I don't want to be around you either. I'm not shaking your hands. I never said I want to shake your hands. Okay? And then you're like, well, and then you're like, well, then you don't want to join in the potlucks, right? Cooking food for people. Because, all that social shit, it's going to be gone out of the wayside. People realize how many microbes are taking in hanging out with their friends and family. And so I just stay on my own. I don't give a shit. But people were releasing demons, and you almost have to pull out the demons out of your body, especially when you get very sick. That's what's running you. The software full of diversity and fertility. That's why people are huge right now or extremely skinny. That's why milk is so important. It has the testosterone hormones that women need to release those fucking demons out of her body. Women are lactose deficient, and they are highly estrogenic, and probably very parasitic. Don't trigger them. These microbes give you the dreams, the nightmares, and the deja vu. They give you warnings. They give you clairvoyance. These microbes can be the life of you or the death of you. They can eat your memories, or they can replicate and develop new memories and connections. They can also make you very skinny or very obese. These microbes are your life, or they are your death. and they are intelligent, extremely intelligent, and you respect that life. You never attack it. You free the life you don't want in your body from captivity, and you also and also make sure you keep yourself alive, because when you hold prisoners in your body, they will torture you and they will overthrow you if you let them. And so many people die young right now. So many young people are dying right now. This 44-year-old that just died. If young people in their mid-40s are dropping like flies, imagine what it's going to be like in 5 years when people in their mid-20s drop like flies. You see the pattern here? There's no guarantee your children are going to live to be 44 if 44-year-olds are dying suddenly. When they want infertility by 2045, who is they? The system has told us 2045 and 2050 infertility, at least in the West. Progressively, in 27 years, people will not live to be in their 40s unless you learn how to redirect. And so I'm thinking, like, I just kind of did this loosely, just kind of give people an idea of what to expect. 2023 to 2025, the 44, 50, and 70-year-olds are dying suddenly, okay? And then 2025 to 2028, the 25 to 35 to 45 and 50 to 70-year-olds are dying suddenly. So from 25 to 70, people are dying suddenly. 2028 to 2035, 15 to 70 are dying suddenly. Then you think about 2035 to 2045, 0 to 15, infertility. They might live to be 44, but they're not going to be bearing any children. They're going to have stillbirths. You're already seeing that now. So you're going to have people who are not going to have kids because they're going to have stillbirths, so they're infertile, or they have children and their children are 15 years old and they die suddenly. It's already happening now. These kids are going doing marathons, dying on a freaking racetrack. And so by 2050, there's going to be infertility, and also means that when you have something like a cancer kill switch, then imagine you're out there in public and you're using remedies and you're holding on to all that offspring from all the growth of mixing in with mixed company, friends, family. And so now you have cancer, assuming that you don't die right on contact. Now you have cancer, so then you get a therapy, a cancer kill switch that you even could be breathing in. And so as your parent cells are dying and not being able to be replaced because you're afraid of food and you're not allowed to purpose your juvenile cells to replace the parent cells, no different than these kids are not surviving and replacing their parents, they're dying suddenly. You're going to have the same thing happen that you're seeing out there in the population. People are dying suddenly, not replacing their parents because they're 25, 35, 27 years old, 15, whatever. That's going to happen in the body, where even the juvenile cells are going to be targeted and kill switched. And so then only the parent cells will be alive until the parents deteriorate faster in an environment like this, especially when you have so many kids that are being targeted that could have been their replacements, but no, they're being targeted to pass away. So what's going on at the micro level with these cancer kill switches are already happening right now in our society. Dying suddenly. And you can blame whatever you want. But what's going on right now in the dying suddenly worlds is going to happen in the therapies for people who have cancer. Yeah, a lot to look forward to. And so you will see it happen a lot more often with people younger and younger, plus a lot more accidents on the road. Because we just had an accident where a semi just rear-ended 5 cars, so 3 cars, 2 cars, 4 cars, whatever, plus a charter bus full of students who were in a band, and 3 students died, 3 civilians in a car died, and 57 were injured. Okay? And you don't know if that dude either died suddenly, had a heart attack, stroke, because he didn't survive. Who knows what the hell happened? That's what happens when you're in a domestic war. You're in a civil war right now. And the road out there and people is the battleground. And so is also your home. It's crazy. Right now, the young generations out there are very skinny, very sickly looking. I noticed that the last 5 years. People's children are looking very skinny, sickly, very fragile. And so, yeah, I want to applaud Janet Peterson because she said that she finally downsized. She said, we recently moved out of New York. We were being stretched too far. We are living in a place 75 smaller. Okay, no car payment. Sold my car for an older, reliable model. We have focused on our quality of life and how to sustain ourselves with less. This has enabled me to focus on my health more and not needing to be out working so much just to make ends meet. Not many understand why we and me made our changes, but the cool thing is we don't care. I love it when people say they have downsized so that way they can take care of themselves. Because what happens when you have so much, again, the big house, the big car, a lot of friends, there's too many mouths to feed. You will die. And so my world removes the middleman, the microbial and mainstream offspring, straight to your life source, maximizing your nutritional profits. People are feeding too many mouths in their body, mind, and spirit, and even in their family and friends. And they don't get maximum nutritional benefit. They have too many offspring in body, mind, and spirit. When you feed so many mouths, you are entertaining way too many people, spreading yourself too thin. When I released all those demons, my life became so simplified. Everything became simpler. Digestion and disease is simpler and easier to get over. Hardly any drama, if at all. The only drama I hear about is consumer drama because, oh, my husband's like, I didn't get my package. It's stuck somewhere. I'm like, oh, shit. That's peace without rest and peace. Death does not have to be the ultimate outcome so a person can get peace. Your life becomes a vacation. Something you don't have to take a vacation from. What people say to me if they could, people have said this to me. It must be nice when you don't have to work and your husband works. I've had people cross boundaries and say, here, Jillian, sending me fucking job announcements. I put that dude in his place. I was polite because I knew my husband wouldn't like me telling him off because I was stuck in that situation. But I put that dude in his place. But I went off on him. And then I apologized because I didn't want to have it come off. So I had to play that game of saying, fuck you, get out of my freaking situation here. It's none of your goddamn business. And then apologize for saying that because I don't want my husband being mad at me. Okay, that's what these women have to deal with. It's having other people in the world get involved in their relationships, whether it's an in-law or a best friend or somebody on the outside that doesn't like your situation, thinks that it's not right, that they go and stick their fucking nose in your world. That's why I released so many people out of my world, because they were too up in my fucking business and they had no business being there. None. And so people say to me, if they could, it must be nice when you don't have to work and your husband works. Yeah, I don't spend a shit ton of money. I don't run credit cards up the yin yang to feed my fucking family. I don't have to go and support a bunch of friends, alcohol, drugs, sex. No, I don't have that kind of fucking lifestyle. And I don't go to mommy and daddy to go and bail me out of bullshit situations. So yeah, it must be nice that I have fucking figured out my life and you haven't. It must be fucking nice. Oh, it is. Well, I don't spend a shit ton of money and he doesn't have to work as hard as he does. He chooses to work so he can afford his lifestyle of fishing and hanging out with the boys. And I have no problem with that. Okay? Isn't that the Republican mentality? You work for what you want. You don't enslave somebody else for all your bullshit. You work for what you want. I'm working for what I want. He's working for what he wants. We live within our means. We're not overextended. And we have no major things to support out there because we're not trying to be fucking saints out there. People will chew you up and spit you out if they could. They will cannibalize you because they can. You let them. So my husband's pretty responsible. So the fact that I don't go out so much has given him latitude to stay home and not be partying to death and being entertained to death by everybody. And so I like being at home. And I like it when he's home. So how do you maximize your life? How do you maximize your life force? Release the demons and lessen the amount of mouths to feed in body, mind, and spirit, and even in your social capital. That's key to longevity. Optimizing your whole life, maximizing every resource available to you. Avoid bleeding heart Republicans and bleeding heart liberalism. That's people's downfall. Bleeding hearts. Stop the bleeding. And so Jim Jones was the programming back in the shape-shifting into activism, religion, and gurus, and of course, large families and influential friends base. All CIA driven. Of course it was. Religion and politics are basically deadly cults, giving power away, allowing absolute power to corrupt absolutely. Check out the queen bees and the king bees in all circles of influence. Impenetrable. And they chase out outsiders. They try to slime you as the outsider to death, and if you don't return the favor, you're kicked out, excommunicated. What is sliming? When you're loving somebody to death and showering them with adoration, trying to bring them into the fold. Okay? And then when you are not working within what they think is appropriate, then they come down on you and try to pull you into what they want. And if you keep resisting, then that's the war. And that's when everyone must walk away. So some people who are free will put themselves back into captivity because slaves cannot function on their own. If you have nowhere to go on Thanksgiving, you are free. So if you have nowhere to go on Thanksgiving, oh my God, be thankful for it. Be thankful for it. Right, do something. Okay? But you have been brainwashed into captivity that you'll find a family to join and they will take pity on you. And there you go, a slave to that life. All right? That's the thing, is these holidays have conscripted people into dependency and war. I remember being depressed so many times when I didn't have anywhere to go on Thanksgiving. I would fly to see my parents every so often, but when I didn't, what was I going to do? My husband and I, when we were in Florida, we didn't have places to go on Thanksgiving. So what did we do? We went to, Bob Evans and bought Thanksgiving to home. Okay? And so it's okay not having anywhere to go for Thanksgiving or even Christmas. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a death sentence or something to be depressed about. When you think about it, those who have to have everyone around them on Thanksgiving and Christmas, those are the cults. Those are the cult of family and friends to entertain you during these holidays is the downfall of right now in this society right now, always has been, but the outcome of people's expectations of dying from friends and family and cultish behavior is accelerated. They're going to realize their intentions sooner. And so then you realize you got to get out of that cult very quickly or that cult will destroy you. And so that was how the system got you through the holidays and families to the point that you'll even conscript your children into depending on somebody else until the system takes their life away. What happened to the people in the people's temple? All unalived. Now look at the cult of friends and family, all loving everyone to death, and they're going to end up unalived. They're already in a civil war, and they're going to end up in the morgue someday, some sooner than others. It's just a matter of time. Already you're seeing friend bases. People are dropping like flies in these friend bases. And you can't do anything about it. So I said, damn, if you are alive, you have a chance to counter being unalived if you so choose, if the slime you're addicted to isn't overwhelming you. I'll tell you, it's very addicting being loved by everyone. So staying alive indefinitely is the ultimate rebellion against the death cultures of friends and family and holidays and religion and politics. Bad boys and bad girls fall into the turning to the good boy and good girl programming. Look at Kat Von D. She was all goth and into her tattoos and stuff, and now she's all Christian. She went from one extreme to the other. That's how the psychology of the programming is. Even my mother told me, oh yeah, I'll breed you to be counterculture because I give you religion. You can always rebel against it. That's what she said to me. She already knew the programming. And look at Kat Von D is doing exactly the same thing. All these people are like, okay, they were all bad boys in Hollywood. Now they're all like, okay, I'm all about Christianity. And oh God, I was like, oh geez. And so bad boys and bad girls fall into turning to be the good boy or the good girl programming. It's all programming, all of it. You're neither good or bad. You're just programming, and you can always redirect without falling into what society deems as good, bad, or falling into the good works or pay it forward. Now, this is where the bad boys who've done bad things in their life, okay, whatever. Now they're into paying it forward. Now they're into going and donating to all these different charities and doing good deeds and being a good person. Okay, I get that. That's good. But to what extent, to what level are you going to now sacrifice yourself? Just like these divorced parents. The one parent that wasn't there and they finally get into a relationship. Now they're feeling so guilty. They're paying their kid. They're giving their kid money and time and all this stuff to make up for what he was or what she wasn't at the time that that kid needed. And so now you have the guilt of people now sacrificing their body, mind, and spirit to make up for whatever they weren't at the time. And so cover yourself and get away from the social constructs if possible. The programming runs very deep. And so this is how the whole thing about good works, the Bible verse of good works, this is how I knew the Christians and their sympathizers were targeted through their religion of good, bad. Even the Hebrews who fall into the same ideology, pagans, Hindus, Muslims. Okay? What is it? 17 Bible verses about good works God has prepared for us. And here's the pay it forward. So if you're all about pay it forward, and we hear people talk about it all the time, because when someone is like, oh, I'm going to be good to everybody, and I'm going to give them all the money I have, and give them all my belongings, and all my time, and all this, and they're being the martyr. They're literally being the martyr. They're in a war, and now they're the martyr. They used to be the aggressor, now they're going to be the martyr. They're now going to fall on their own sword. And that's what goes on when you have been bred to be a certain way, and then you realize, oh God, I'm kind of ashamed of how I was. People fall on their swords all the time. It's crazy. They do harry-carry, but through social constructs. So if you're all about pay it forward, nope, I do not support suicide. And you have an addiction and issues you project on others. Because if you truly wanted to help humanity and other people, you would respect yourself 1,000 times more than what you are exhibiting today. Dying people give away everything. They give away their body, their mind, and their spirit, and their prized possessions. They also give away their time to everyone who will take it. That's how you know society is dying. It's horrible to watch. And you're watching people fall on their swords. All right, I'm going to go pee real quick. Hold on. All right. And so people go bankrupt paying it forward in body, mind, and spirit. This is why I won't die for anyone. People who pay it forward will die for everybody and then blame the government. And they're easily manipulated. That's in all religion. That was the brainwashing by the cult leaders, religious leaders. Pay it forward as a way to take from both the giving and receiving party, benefiting a third party. Because without money, the receiving party wouldn't be able to pay for whatever item they wanted. In the end, the government makes out. When you give away your time to everyone, they're using you up until it dies suddenly, and then the government doesn't have to pay your Social Security. Because when you are the survivor, then you either take your husband's Social Security or use yours, whatever is highest. I thought you can get both. No. If something happened to my husband, I would take his Social Security and that would be it. If something happened to me, he would either take mine or take his. He'd probably live on his because I don't have as much as he does. That's how shit works. And so when you're all hanging out with your friends and playing all with all your friends and not taking care of yourself and doing drugs and alcohol and so much sex, you're actually saving the government money in the long run. When you think about it, because you're paying for all that bullshit. You're getting taxed if you're selling the weed, if that's what you're doing. But you're paying for the alcohol, paying for the drugs, paying for the sex. Because you're buying the chick everything. And then you die before you're able to retire. And if you're not with anybody, who gets the Social Security? Does the kid? Who knows? Eventually, even that kid's going to end up being dead because they're going to follow in their parents' footsteps. And guess what? The government saved so much money. So all these boomers are partying themselves to death. Drugs, alcohol, sex, and everything else. And diets and all that stuff. And hanging out with people all the time. They're going to die sooner, saving the government billions and billions of dollars. More for us that are going to survive Gen X. Assuming even some of the millennials and some of the boomers might survive with the J world, but I don't know. And so that's what I'm saying, stay alive, because you know what? When you're getting, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month from your Social Security, and you live in a relatively, conservative area, this is for Americans. I don't know what goes on over there in the UK. They have their own stuff. Okay? Now you have a good life. You can redevelop yourself. You can learn stuff. You have now a cushion to give you to springboard into the next world. That's what you're aiming for, is to be able to get that Social Security, so that way either scale down your life so you can afford to survive, and then wait for that Social Security too, so then you can redirect and contribute to society in a different way, or just take a vacation. And just take a break. You've worked for the last 50, 60, 70 years. You deserve a break. That's why, what's his name? Was it Roosevelt? Yeah, that put in the Social Security, the safety net for the aging adults. But right now, some people are not going to make it to fucking Social Security. They're too far gone. They're going to die before they even get it. Some Gen Xers are going to die before they even see the possibility of it. And so in the end, the government makes out, when you give away your time to everyone, they're using you up until it dies suddenly, and the government doesn't have to pay your Social Security. You just save the government millions of dollars when you're so needy for friends and family, brainwashing people into good works, taking away their personal life force, all very religious, and the government makes out in the end, and your children don't get any benefit from that, because they will buy into pay it forward, right? Or using everything and consuming everything until they die suddenly. And so what is pay it forward? A third-party beneficiary is a person, okay, so basically pay it forward is about third-party beneficiaries. So a third-party beneficiary is a person or entity that benefits from a contract's performance even though they are not a party to the contract. The third-party beneficiary typically needs to be expressly named in the contract. A third-party beneficiary may have certain rights that can be enforced in the contract if not fulfilled. For example, if a building contract contains a term that the contractor is required to use materials of good quality, then the term might be the subject of a third-party enforcement right. The concept is old of pay it forward, but the particular phrase may have been coined by Lilith Hardy Hammond in her 1916 book, In the Garden of Delight. Robert Heinlein's 1951 novel, Between Planets, helped popularize the phrase pay it forward is implemented in a contract law of loans in the concept of third-party beneficiaries. Okay? And so and so when you're like, oh, I'm going to give to this person, and so you're taking something away, you're taking time away, you're taking money away, you're taking food away from your kids, from yourself, from your family, so you can absolve yourself from feeling guilty of being a bad person because you fell into the religious concepts out there. That's all brainwashing. People think I'm against Christians. No, I am trying to show you how the system used Christianity's own religion to off themselves. I swear I'm not the enemy. It's so unbearable to watch Christians hurt themselves as well as other religions, but I see so much of the programming in Christianity. It is insane. When paying it forward regresses you back, rethink pay it forward. It's a death programming, indicators of a mass destruction of your community and family. When you must make others feel good, you have an addiction to sliming strangers to make you feel better about yourself. I don't make it a habit to make strangers feel good. I'm not into public manipulation, masturbation. That's not my gig. It's not my job to make that person feel good. It's not my job to uplift everybody around me. It's not my job. If you think yourself as a Mother Teresa and a Jesus, wow, aren't you full of yourself? That you think you have the responsibility to lift the fallen? What? Who the hell do you think you are? That's cult mentality. That's literally cult mentality. When you think you have the power to make everybody feel good, to the point where you take from them and take away from yourself. That is the death culture. People cannot help but slime perfect strangers. like a person who gives away their most treasured items before they off themselves. It's biological when some goth turns into Christianity, converting themselves into sliming themselves in the world. That was the balancing force of Apostle Paul, from life to death. Corinthians, right? Love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't boast. Love lets you walk all over you and let somebody just completely just run roughshod over you and throw you away when it's convenient. Very biblical. Religion, Rosicrucian. Apostle Paul even switched sides from the bad self-religious Pharisee to the good self-sacrificing love and emotional Christian. Remember, balance. One must balance out laws and emotions. But the system weaponized your perception around love and laws and weaponized the love via the love drugs. And I seen a cop go by. The system played both sides off one another, and people die for their beliefs, wanting to be the saints in their society, surrounded by family and friends, so they die suddenly. One must rise above the programming if they want to save themselves. But hey, if you want to be a martyr and fall on your sword and have everybody worship you and what you were and have been, fuck. Be that Jesus to everybody. Be that martyr. Go die for everybody else's sins if that's what you think that's what you need to do. People think I'm hard-hearted. No, I won't die for anyone. If that makes me the enemy, what does that make you and your friends? Wanting people to die for their beliefs. And when you have a mixture of people in both Christianity and Judaism and all religions, all dying for their belief systems, everything has been reduced down to love. That's how they got you. That's how I knew I was up against a major force that some people will not be able to penetrate. That's why I was facing so much hate. Because people are dying for love, literally dying for love. Okay, so according to the Acts, Paul lived as a Pharisee and participated in the persecution of early disciples of Jesus, possibly Hellenized diaspora Jews converted to Christianity in the area of Jerusalem prior to his conversion. See, I didn't even know that. So I Googled Corinthians, and I Googled, well, who's the one that wrote Corinthians? And I was like, oh, it's Apostle Paul. And who's Apostle Paul? And then I read a little bit of his biography. Oh, okay. Because yeah, Christians were Jews at one point. It's the balancing force. You got to have a little bit of empathy, right? A little bit. A little bit of emotion with the law. There's got to be a balance of emotion and law. And sometimes those two worlds cannot work together. They can't. When you go to the justice system, there is emotion. But people use emotion to get their point across. But it's either you can prove a situation or you can't. Giving reasonable doubt. I mean, that's the law. It's supposed to be blind, but it isn't always. Sometimes the justice system is used as a weapon. And sometimes it doesn't give the justice that people think they should get. It's crazy. If you don't have to end up in the justice system, don't. You don't want to be screwed, literally. And so giving away prized possessions and other personal things, paying it forward, is all programming for mass community unaliveness. So when you see everybody paying it forward and being all like, oh, love and orgiastic and all that shit, it's dying. It's a dying community, a dying family. Yeah. Okay, so love through the alkaloids, developing fertility from the environmental ectoplasm to sexual slavery and then death. Oh yeah, love was the weapon against humans. Respect gives you a chance. Respect yourself first or you will love everyone to death. And most of all, people love themselves to death. They love their animals to death. And they will love you to death if you allow them. Love is an addiction and you can feel it from people. And if you do not return the love they give you, they hate you. I've been slimed so much the last 7 years. Like literally, I've been slimed so much. And I know they're coming from a good place. And I know they're trying to understand my situation, but they have so much love in them. They have been under the spell of love and hormones. Of course, they want family. And when I'm like, hey, I need some boundaries, and I'm not reciprocating the love, okay, expecting me to follow what they're doing and what they believe in and all that, when I'm not reciprocating that love and devotion, because that's the expectation. Oh, I support you, so you're supposed to support me. No, that's not necessarily the case. Just because you have something to offer out there that I don't necessarily agree with doesn't mean I have to support you because you're supporting me. You choose to support me. If you're not, then whatever. But that's the thing, is that people will slime you to death to then also try to pull you into their cult. And so that's why I don't have a group. That's why I don't get on people's pages, because I'm not trying to be a fucking cult leader. Because what happens when you're a cult leader, then people will think they have the right to try to convert you. Because you're doing your thing and you're saying, oh, I'm open to all beliefs. I'm open to changing and evolution. So they'll think, oh, because you have a group that you're running, if they're supporting you, then it's only fair you return the favor and support them. Okay. That's how people get caught up in the war of conversion. They love bomb you and they slime the fuck out of you. They make you feel guilty for not returning the favor. I know the manipulation. I felt it. I dealt with it. It was crazy. It's a very sticky situation to be in. People are raised in slime. I speak from experience. And when you stop loving the people in the J world, they hate you unless they learn how to respect themselves. Most people are under the influence of the slime in their life. That's the only way I can put it, because I felt the slime 5 years ago and I resisted it until I could walk away from it. And I released all the slimy people out of my world. They don't slime me anymore. They don't, because I won't stand for it. Some have said, oh, and I'm like, okay, I know they mean well and they're not heavily into my world and that's part of their religion, but they don't do it very often. And so I just kind of chill out. But there's some in the religious world that were sliming the fuck out of me and I had to release them because it was just too much. And so, which is why only a few people in the J world stuck around. They learned how to respect themselves, trying to balance out the old world and the world and this world, the new world. Many people in the J world are still very slimed. They haven't shaken that addiction, and many of them will not shake that addiction. When everyone loves you, you have just been slimed. And it's hard to wash the slime off your body. It's hard to wash the slime from within your body. Love bombing anyone is sliming them to death. And you will see it. Both the left and the right slime themselves and each other to death and then blame the government. And it's all through the remedy system. Spells and curses of love are so hard to shake. The slime of love is in family, religion, politics, and science. Cannabis is the ultimate love drug. Ohio passed the recreational cannabis use for a reason, and it was not benevolent to the cannabis users. It was benevolent for the society who will watch people love themselves and family to death. And so you're going to have to watch it. Everyone out there who is addicted to the cannabis, they're going to fall apart because all of those hormones are going to deteriorate them. It's making the monsters inside stronger, the boa constrictors inside stronger, deteriorating them. But they'll feel good on the way out the door, right? And you won't be popular pointing this out. How many people are addicted to cannabis right now? This is not a popular viewpoint. Cannabis was so prolific in the 1960s. That was the real big kickoff to the 100 Years' War of family, civil war, sexuality. People are suffering astronomically, and love is the only remedy for them until they die suddenly. It fucking sucks. And so when you point this out, they're going to think, oh, she's an infidel. She's left wing. She's from California. Oh, she wasn't raised right. She wasn't raised like us. She swears. She's Asian. She talks smack about children and families and friends. As your friends are fucking dropping like flies. When you have friends like that don't ever give you another point of view, who needs fucking enemies, right? I'm not the enemy. I'm not even in your fucking world. But they will look at me as the enemy. And so antibiotic resistance equals too many creepy, crawly offspring overwhelming the body, causing obesity, emaciation, aging process, and potentially die suddenly. Aggressive fertility is the aging process and disease management and violence. Okay? And so what are you giving birth to? Are you giving birth to yourself? Are you giving birth to the colony of boa constrictors in your gut, eating your infrastructure? Are you giving birth to a baby who will work against you? What are you giving birth to? That's the question all of you should be asking yourself. Okay, and this is the last thing I'm going to say here because I'm going now back to the beginning. Adaptable and reinforced immune system can push out cancerous cells before they become out of control. Weak and sluggish immune systems need the therapies and be subject to autoimmune disorders as the body develops ways to assimilate to the programmed therapies, i.e. immune system kill switches. Imagine disappearing parent cells via age and degradation, and then the juvenile cells that could have turned into the parent cells replacements be neutralized by the immune system, stopping evolution adaptation, basically dying suddenly, or having your kids die suddenly. When you're using an immune system kill switch, it's like having your children die suddenly. They won't be around to replace you. They're done. They're gone. And imagine that happening into your body at the micro level. A kill switch is a safety mechanism, right? A safety mechanism, okay, in another context, that shuts off machinery in an emergency. It can also be known as an emergency brake, emergency stop, E-stop, emergency off, EMO, or emergency power off, EPO. A kill switch can be used in a variety of situations, including machinery. When the machinery cannot be shut down in the usual manner, data breaches, when a business detects a data breach, car theft, when a fuse box kill switch stops power from getting to the car. A kill switch can be a mechanical version of the same mechanism. For example, a fuse box kill switch can be installed in a discrete location and block power from getting to the car. All your cancer research campaigns and money went to developing an immune system kill switch, because that's what's going to take, is your immune system attacking the cancer cells. Instead of your immune system pushing it out, no, your immune system is going to program natural killer T cells to go and attack the juveniles in your body that could potentially replace you and evolve you. No different than your children dying suddenly. That's what you financed. The destruction of your own family and you via the alkaloids. People are financing kill switches versus a defense system. You ran for the cure. You donate to all the anti-cancer campaigns. You did it. No, I don't want to hear how the system is destroying anyone when all the diet suddenly groups are promoting dog dewormers as a remedy against disease, or supplements or diets developing fertility and growth. You laid the groundwork for a fertility immune system kill switch. Immune system kill switch should scare the shit out of you, but it does not. People take those therapies and breathe on you in a crowded room, the ectoplasm, and then you cultivate the immune system kill switch via inhaling ectoplasm, and now your body, a closed immune system, will house immune system kill switches. And then people blame everyone, but you're housing that in your body. You have no idea the kinds of therapies people are on, and so if your immune system is not strong enough to defend against an immune system kill switch floating in your environment, then it died suddenly. Wonderful. That's sarcastic. You should be scared shitless hanging out with your church groups and party goers. This is why I stayed home the last 3 years, why I did wear a mask in the beginning. Many of you laughed at me. How does it feel knowing you could be incubating immune system kill switches? But then they're like, oh, it's the anti-cancer. That's how they get you. Understand my world if you can. It's downright scary out there. And so that's all I'm going to say on that. And so, yeah, we're in some interesting world right now. But you had to see that we are in a, basically, when you think about it, the second American Civil War here in America, but also in the UK, all over. I mean, even in Africa, people are dying in Africa. Somebody has heart condition in Africa and he dies suddenly. Now, Africans will go through it too, but they're also going through their own evolution. But I said the war of family versus individual, the opposite also true, yeah. Man said family versus individual, Civil War 1960. The second U.S. Civil War of World War III, Civil War 1860, black and states' rights, 1960, family, sexuality, women, 2060 is the continent. Because when we go into 2100, it's going to be a very different world. Very different world. And so the writing is on the wall. The writing is on the wall. You are in a civil war. And so if you can handle fighting the battles within your body, and you have lessened all of those distractions and skirmishes from your lifestyle, you might be able to save yourself. But right now, we have families that are conscripting their daughters and sons into these wars. They won't survive. You already know they're not going to survive. I already know they're not going to survive. They don't have what it takes. They don't have my knowledge. They don't have my wherewithal. And the influences around them are too strong. The forces of spells of follow in mommy and daddy and in-laws' footsteps are so impenetrable. It's just now watching a shit show. It's like, it's crazy. and that's where you have to be really strong to watch people around you just drop like flies. And you already see what's going to happen for these kids, for your nephews, for your nieces. for sometimes even your grandchildren. You might be showing them, but it doesn't mean they're going to survive you showing them. They might not even have the infrastructure to deal with it. It's not even about not treating disease. Do they have the infrastructure to battle the battles that are necessary? And again, when you have people around you that are trying to get you to do all these things, right? Where you're out there, these kids are out there going to the playground. They're going to the school marches, the football games, all the social stuff. And they have predisposed issues and they haven't really released the demons. And it's a question if they survive in major energy conversion. There's a whole lot more to it that maybe these kids aren't really equipped to do it. It's just very questionable. And so just assume that you're going to have to save yourself, and you might be the only one out of your whole family that's going to survive between now and 2050. 27 years is not that long. But just assume you might be the only one standing in the next 27 years in your immediate family. Because we've barely just begun. It's barely just begun. There's already another hurricane brewing somewhere out there. But remember, we're headed into winter, then it'll be spring, and then it'll be more hurricane season. More crazy weather. Right now, there's a volcano in Iceland. Holy shit. Good luck. All right, bye.